You know, people who enjoy just a good adventure, a good story, there is a lot in here to like. It is a funny film, it is a romantic film. I think it does a lot of good stuff in there. I'm kind of very proud of it for being as good and as fun as it is when it is a smallish British kind of production, trying to pass off as something a lot bigger, and I think it does. You know, I think it achieves that.
It's one of those ones that if I had friends with like 11, 12-year-old kids and they were at a loose end and they'd watched all the Marvels and all the Disneys and what have you, I'd be like, check this old film out, guys. It's a solid piece, and for what it is as well, yeah, it goes high up on the list, and I'd much prefer it to Princess Bride.
Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of Flixwatcher podcast. Today I'm joined by Daryl.
Hello.
Matt.
Hey guys.
And Ethan Hunt Helen.
Hello.
Ethan Helen Hunt. And we're going to be talking about Stardust.
Did it with the wrong film?
That's going to link into the other film we're recording in this session, but hey, you wouldn't know.
Thank you as always to the mighty people for the mighty tunes, and thanks to Ben from Rockwood Audio for his awesome editing skills.
Please do remember to write a review and rate us on Apple Podcasts and anywhere you can do where you listen to the podcast, because it really does help us.
And you can join in the conversation with us on Twitter
at FlixWatcherPod and on Instagram
at Flixwatcher. Hello film fans, welcome to this episode of Flixwatcher podcast. Joining us remotely today we have Matt and Daryl. If you please could say hello and tell the listeners a little bit more about who you are and what you do, please.
Hello, I'm Daryl Bär. I'm co-host on the Is Paul Dano Ok podcast, as well as co-host on Sudden Double Deep.
So that's N+1 podcast since you last came on. Both of you.
Yes. Well, yes, because, my name is Matt Brothers, and along with Daryl, I am also co-host of the Is Paul Dano Ok podcast. And now, regular third co-host on Sun Double Deep, and still going on Spocklight, the Star Trek podcast. So I've somehow tripled. I'm now running triple figures, so, 3.
That's not triple figures.
It's not the same thing, is it? Oh, God, I have no time to do anything. Yeah.
Daryl's a teacher thinking that's not triple figures. I don't know how to teach. I don't know how to say now. You're well into adulthood.
Oh, no.
I mean, triple, singular, 3. But yeah, all three shows are very different and all have very different kind of recording and release schedules. So that works out quite well. It's not like I'm on 3 shows that all release weekly or all come around at the same time. So without that kind of difference there, I think I would just be a bit more of a puddle. But I think this is also a good thing about remote records from the past year. I mean, I'm back in Daryl's house now, which is lovely. And
I don't know why I did that noise. That makes no sense.
We both sat here in a state of undress. No, but that's been great because I imagine there's tons of people in the past year, 2020, that have started podcasts themselves, or been able to guest on more. And I think it's brought a lot more people together in terms of who to get for guests and who you can grab. So in this kind of day and age, it's not unfeasible to go for 3. Why not?
Well, I mean, we've had some fun doing this in the lockdown. Obviously, it's not been a good situation for people, but we've had some really interesting shows where, like in one extreme case, we were recording one guy who's north of New Zealand, and the other guy was in Oklahoma. Wow. And that's just the kind of thing you can't do in old normal. So it has kind of given those opportunities, I think, and like I said, a lot of podcasts have come out of it, that some of them are generally quite interesting. But before we go into this film for today, we should say that you guys have both been on for previous episodes of Flixwatcher. Matt was on for Friday Night Lights and La La Land, one of Helen's favourite films. And Sudden Double Deep in the form of Jeanette and Daryl brought us Agnes Varda, I can't remember what this, Faces Places, which is well welcomed in the pod booth. And we also had Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. So guys, if you're interested in listening to any of the what these guys have got to say and want to hear more from them from Flixwatcher, just look for those films. But we're talking today. Oh, sorry, I should be asking you about this new podcast that you started. Is Paul Dano Ok? Is
he? Yes, we're still trying to find this out. So this was one that was born out of last lockdown, basically, in that little gap where we had sort of September, October time where we could momentarily get back in touch. I think we were recording a Sunday Deep, and we got onto the subject of active filmography podcasts and who would be who would be other good ones to do and what would the angle be. And with Paul Dano, it was a case of he's got such an eclectic filmography. He's one of those guys who, if you might not know him, but you certainly know of his work. You might not know he's in certain things. And then when we tell you, you're like, oh, of course. And we were like, well, he gets beaten up and everything, right? He goes through the ringer. So we're like, well, does he? Like, does he get beaten up in everything? So let's get into that. And he's got such a great range of stuff where he's got massive films like There'll Be Blood and Prisoners and leading roles like Swiss Army Man and Love and Mercy, and then he's just in a ton of random stuff. There's a weird sort of late noughties period, like post There Will Be Blood, where he does a lot of weird things, like little films again. He goes up and down. Little films like Explicit Ills or Weapons or Light and the Sufferer, like blank faces all round, and for good reason, because these are very kind of obscure films. And then he's just made the move into directing with Wildlife and more TV with War and Peace and Escape at Dannemora. And of course, he's got the Batman coming out next year. So,
yep. Ruby Sparks as well, Meek's Cutoff, both of those with his partner as well. And yeah, season 1 was pretty amazing out the gate in terms of the weird and wonderful mix we had in terms of.
Yeah, because tell us about the mix, because it's not chronological, is it? How have you chosen the...
Matt?
Well, that was it, because we looked at it and we think if we did this chronologically, it's just a lot of, some weird sort of TV movies to begin with, the odd kind of good, Sundance indie that he's in as a child, and then just kind of this little slew of like odd things until you hit stuff like Girl Next Door, Little Miss Sunshine, There'll Be Blood, which do come quite early in his career, really. But chronologically, it would mean that our first season would be pretty tough going from the offset. So we mix it up where we try to pick like the big ones and the little ones you don't, and kind of mix up the seasons that way. So we try and start big and end big and fill in the gaps, and then sprinkle it out with some bonuses that look at the things like his TV work or his music with his band Mook, which is a really good musical side project. And The Sopranos,
big Sopranos fan, I was like, that's what I've looked about listening to your show, is that it's like, shit, he was in Sopranos. And as soon as you say Paul Dano's in Sopranos, I was like, I know exactly which episode he's in. But it just wasn't there. And one thing that was funny for me is listening to your Listen With Sunshine episode. Daryl, first of all, how the hell have you not watched Listen With Sunshine up until that point? But it's one of those... He's one of those actors that once you realise his name, then you can almost trace back all the films you've seen him in, because but you haven't seen him, but you just don't recognise him, and you don't feature him in your brain up until that point.
Yeah, he's a strange mix. He falls somewhere between being genuinely chameleonic and more of like a character actor, what you expect of somebody maybe a bit older than him taking these kind of roles, because even though he does get beaten up a lot, I don't think he's rarely typecast. He doesn't feel like the type. We were discussing this recently, I think, where kind of like, I think for some people, if you say Paul Dano, they think kind of like weaselly, potential serial killer, weird guy. But then in stuff like Okja, as the leader of this animal liberation front, kind of like a group of protesters, he's quite suave. He's strutting around New York City in a suit, and he looks damn good. So, but now, of course, he's playing the Riddler in the upcoming Batman, so he's going back to, I'm assuming, more Prisoners, Denis Villeneuve's Zodiac style, it seems.
I was thinking he's probably one of our most frequent actors, because we've had Prisoners, Okja, and there's another one that's just off the top of my head. I'll come to me later on. But he's been at least 3 of our... Oh, yeah, and Looper. So there's been at least 3 episodes of ours. But, guys, if you're interested in learning more about Paul Dano, and at the end of the season, I am assured Daryl and Matthew will tell you how to say his surname. That's the final episode. Go and find their podcast. But today we're talking about Stardust. Matt, this is your choice, Stardust. Can you tell us, first of all, why you chose it? And then you have a 60-second countdown, which I'm just going to bring up on my phone.
Oh God.
To tell us the synopsis.
Well, I picked this because I think it's a really interesting fantasy film, and it kind of came out of the gate as a bit of like a cult film, in that it was kind of this reverent kind of fantasy comedy, which is notoriously quite hard to get right, but with this huge sprawling cast and Neil Gaiman adaptation, and it never felt like it had much impact, but I think it's getting more reverence now as it goes on, so maybe it is finding its feet as a cult film. And basically I worked on it for 2 weeks back in the day, so that was kind of a chance to be like, oh yeah, I've got a lot of cool memories on there. So I felt quite close to quite a lot of the sequences here. So it was my first kind of job on any big film set back in 2006. So yeah, good chance to reminisce. And I do have a soft spot for it, as an experience and as a film.
And okay, let's go to the synopsis. Right. Hold on, I just need to get the timer ready. 3, 2, 1, go.
So this is a fantasy film about a young man called Tristan who lives in the town of Wall, which borders a fantasy land, the kingdom of Stormhold. And the king has 7 sons who are vying to be the new king. So it essentially becomes a MacGuffin chase where this star falls from the sky and takes the form of Claire Danes. So Tristan crosses the wall into this land to retrieve the star, this woman, to bring back to the woman he's infatuated with back at home. The king's sons are out to try and get the necklace that's on her neck that knocked her out of the sky in the first place to become king. And at the same time, there's a trio of witches led by Michelle Pfeiffer who are on the hunt for the star as well because they want to eat her heart to gain everlasting life.
Fair play. You said it's a bit of a cult classic, and I remember when I first watched this, I just kind of thought, well, let's go to cinema. What's on? Stardust. Sure, why not? And it has, like I say, it's getting a bit of reverence, and I think everyone who saw it, well, I don't know, we'll find out in the course of this maybe, people were just generally kind of surprised by it. I mean, Helen, Daryl, what were your thoughts on Stardust? Have you seen it before, first of all, and what was your thoughts the first time you saw it versus the most recent one for Flixwatcher? Daryl.
First time I saw this was, I think I saw this as a DVD rental.
How old is it?
Yeah, 2007, right? Yeah. So this would have been a DVD rental, probably from like Love Film or something like that back in the day. And God, I feel old saying that. It's weird, right? And yeah, I really, really liked it. So it did boggle my mind when I checked out Letterboxd and realised that I'd not seen it since. So I was like, I must have seen it since I started a Letterboxd account in 2012. Nope. I was like, that seems odd because I remember really enjoying it as well. And great fun. Good stuff.
Yeah, great fun, Helen.
So I definitely did not see this when it came out because I wasn't in the country, so I specifically know I did not. And then I just remember that everyone was just kind of talking about it. Like my dad was like, oh, he really loved it. Like, you've got to see it. Like, you've got to see De Niro in it. Like, it's really great. And other people as well. And I think like Empire and everyone like really loved it. And there was just kind of like this huge buzz around Goldman and Vaughn, like the team together, like doing that. And I watched it and I was a bit like, oh, not for me. And then when you picked it, I thought, right, this is it. I'm going to watch it. I'm going to get it. And I watched it. I was like, it's not for me.
So what is it though? Because I mean, Goldman and Vaughn, they work together on Kick-Ass, and they're a good combination. I think the thing for me is the reason it kind of would have passed my radar is because it's kind of a weird kind of setup as a kid's fantasy, and that's not really a genre. That's not really a genre I would have gone to see. And I think I knew kind of Ricky Gervais was in it. I didn't, and I knew I think Claire Danes was probably the biggest draw for me because I was a huge fan of My So-Called Life, of which there was only one season. And Romeo and Juliet to a certain extent, but I liked her more from My So-Called Life. I was like, oh, Claire Danes is still kicking her out. It'd be good to see what she's in. And for me, just like, there was this film with all these actors in it, and I was like, I know them. There's Adam Buxton as a ghost, and there's David Williams. It's like, this is a weird kind of US, UK melange of people in one film. What's Robert De Niro doing there next to Dexter Fletcher? So that was all kind of a really interesting piece about how this kind of thing came together. But also, I just really just enjoyed it as a romp of a film.
Well, yeah, I don't know how they really kind of pushed it, because because the cast is really stacked, but it's not like kind of being led as like a new De Niro flick or Pfeiffer, but it is a really good cast across the board.
This was originally a Gilliam thing, wasn't it?
I can completely imagine that. And it seems weird for Vaughn to do this now, looking at his most recent stuff.
Yeah, because this would have been after Layer Cake for him, but before Kick-Ass. So I think it's the first script Jane Goldman did, especially with him. And yeah, so I don't know how much they pushed it as, a big Neil Gaiman adaptation. This is a couple of years before Coraline comes out as well. So I'm not sure how many other bits of his work had come out on the big screen on such scale up until now. But I think it's quite like a lightweight one of his books anyway. It is just kind of like, a light fantasy romp. And I think it was always the tone of this that they never quite knew what to push with, because I think I can't remember from the trailers whether they were trying to push it as a comedy or as a fantasy or as a family film. And I think people found where it sat with them when they saw it. And then it was often like the opposite of what had been sold to them. So it's like, oh, I enjoy this as a family film. I thought it was a comedy. Or I like it as a comedy. I thought it was a fantasy. You know, so it does toe that line really strangely. And I think the way that you do have these big Hollywood actors mixing with kind of, you know, Mark Heap and people off British TV that we love is a strange mix. And you know, and legends like Peter O'Toole as a cameo here not long before he died. And Mark Strong, you know, so regular Vaughn player Mark Strong, like propping up here. Is he in Layer Cake? I'm not sure, but if not, then
Jason Flemyng as well.
Jason Flemyng, Dexter Fletcher, all these guys. So it's strange. Like, I don't know how much DNA of this is in a lot of Vaughn's other stuff, because Kick-Ass and then Kingsman's kind of where he's landed. But I think he does do these kind of essentially small British films that attempt to be bigger than they are. And it's quite an ambition that I quite like, because these are always pretty cheap. Because obviously, like, I worked on this, but a few years later, I work on Kick-Ass 2 as well, which isn't Vaughn. But even that cost less than the first Kick-Ass. And it was always like we were making some sort of scrappy indie film. I mean, I say scrappy, it was like 25 million, which is nothing to sniff at. But for something that was a sequel, B, a superhero film, you know, like a summer film, it's, you know, you definitely feel it when you're on the ground and you have no craft surfaces. I mean, what am I to do?
When I was watching this time around, I was thinking, what were the guys on the flying pirate ship thinking that they were in scenes with De Niro when they are at best UK character actors, at worst they're just like day playing extras. They're on the scene all the time with Robert De Niro, and he's having fun. I mean, I think Robert De Niro's role in this hasn't aged that well.
No,
and how he's played it. I remember the first time thinking it was fucking hilarious, but now I think that, dude, there's ways to do this, and there's ways to do this, and this isn't the way to do it, at least in 2021 eyes. But yeah, the mix of Sarah Alexander next to Michelle Pfeiffer, that's not something I've seen. It's just bizarre. So I think I'm almost bowled over by how this has been put together, as well as the film itself. And I don't know if that's a way to view it.
Yeah, I heard that. I think there's a bit of trivia that, you know, the studio or the producers were really against Charlie Cox as the lead because he was pretty much an unknown. But then once they cast De Niro and Pfeiffer, they were like, all right, you can have your unknown as a lead. And, you know, I was so glad to see him kind of get a second win with Daredevil and be so excellent in it, because I remember this as being like, oh, he's meant to be the next kind of big thing. And, you know, directly after this, you know, he didn't kind of have a big stratospheric leading man in films type thing.
He was great in Boardwalk Empire season 2.
Yeah, 2 and 3. I thought he was really good in that, yeah. So, I mean, what was it for you, Helen, that it didn't ring true?
I just thought it was a bit boring, to be honest. I mean, it really, 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 really reminds me of The Princess Bride, which we've reviewed before. And that's one that I know, like, so many people love, but it just does not connect with me. So it's just, I think...
We have a kinship, you and I. Because me and The Princess Bride, we'd never had that thing, man. Yeah, I get it. I totally get
what
that.
It is. It's like
I do like this though, Helen. So you are out on a limb on your own with this. I hate to do that to you.
It's fine.
But yeah, I totally get The Princess Bride,
I would be
man.
coming into this. But
Seriously.
Yeah, I mean, there's things I do enjoy, like Mark Strong. But
is it like fairy tale fantasy? Is that kind of not do it for you in general? So Tangled, Frozen kind of thing. Is that?
I don't think I'm not sure I've seen Tangled. I might have seen it. I'm not sure, and I definitely haven't seen Frozen. So maybe I think this is maybe like this and westerns are the two genres that I just don't really do it for me. But yeah, like I say, I really enjoy Mark Strong in absolutely anything, and like I just do really like him in this. So the fact that he's kind of like in it for the 2 hours plus runtime, you know, I kind of stuck with it. But yeah, I was really kind of wanting the time to have elapsed and maybe to have got it this time round. But yeah, I think I'm just going to say it's just not for me.
I think it's really hard to do sort of essentially like twee fairy tale, like very sincere stories like this in live action. Because, like, you know, it starts off, you know, like Ian McKellen voiceover, and it's kind of very much like Once Upon a Time. And everyone's so kind of like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed in it as well. Like Sienna Miller's kind of really giving her role as this kind of, you know, the town
belle.
Yes, that's it. Town belle. Yeah. And then even from, you know, you got down to little sort of baby Henry Cavill as this real cad.
That was a shock to me. I did not remember he was in this.
Yeah. And then Charlie Cox is really giving
his
it.
Film?
I think he He's in The Tudors, isn't he? Which is around the same
Oh, that's
time.
the TV show, though.
The TV show, yeah. So
Yeah.
film-wise,
It's a
yeah,
little
I don't know
after,
about
isn't
Henry
it?
Cavill, but he looks so young here.
Everyone looks so young. Like, everyone.
He's just being everyone's so sincere with it, I think. And I think that's if you can't, if the comedy isn't up a certain level, or there isn't enough sort of like stakes and like plot progression, like just being really twee and sincere can kind of leave a bitter taste in the mouth for some people.
I just think it's a strange tone all round because like your opening salvo is a young guy crossing this wall into this enchanted kingdom, and the first thing he does is cops off with the first woman of age that he meets, and
Who's a captive.
who's absolutely a captive, and then 9 months later out pops Charlie Cox, and that's such a strange way to start, because you're starting with somebody who you think, oh, this is my protagonist, and if you obviously don't know Charlie Cox from Adam, and you may have seen the trailer once or twice, you just go, oh, this is my leading man. Oh no, now he's grown up, and it's
Oh, do you mean Ben Barnes? That's
Yeah.
the young version of his
Totally,
dad.
yeah. And then it switches up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Very odd. And then just the tone all round. There's I wouldn't call it a horniness exactly, but there is a definite, like, every single
Sexual energy.
sexual energy, and mostly revolving around every single female character in this, because the women are either decrepit and elderly, witchy, or they are of age, and it's a really weird. And then you've got Michelle Pfeiffer, who's both. It's really odd. I'm sure this was a certain awakening for certain people watching this. That's for sure. Yeah, very odd, very odd. But then you've got Charlie Cox as the one that he's a suave mofo in this for sure.
I was thinking it's kind of like a reverse Death Becomes Her. Well, it's kind of it had elements of Death Becomes Her in there, because with swallowing the star and becoming of age for Michelle Pfeiffer again. I thought it was quite a fun play with every time she uses a spell, she loses some youth as she gets older.
It's interesting how there's kind of all these elements of, the lore of whatever this fantasy world is, and we see snippets of it. So there's whatever the witches are going through. Then there's this cool thing with the king, and the line of succession is all about murdering your brothers, and that could be a film in itself, like a kind of battle royale to like whittle down who the heir's going to be, and seeing all the ghosts of the previously dead brothers and how they died. It's either like they're frozen or they're on fire or they've been squished, and that's really fun, and they kind of act as a bit of like a sort of a chorus throughout the film, just popping up and sort of commentating. And they must have had a fun few days in front of the green screen.
Yeah, I did it. That just makes me laugh each time I see it. 'Cause, I mean, David Walliams is probably the biggest person on that of the brothers now, but then he's probably a lot smaller character. But Mark Heap still makes me laugh that he almost survived the longest out of the brothers.
Yeah.
And they play the old gag of Mark Strong played the old gag of, nope, I didn't swallow the poison.
And that is very Princess Bride, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, they're totally right about how everything's a bit horny, Daryl, because there's that bit where Mark Heap's like perving through the walls at stuff going on. He's like, oh guys, get a load of this, and just seeps off through the wall again.
It's not like it's a fantasy that you could really aim at. This isn't like this ain't your mama's fantasy. It's not something that your kids could really sit like this is like tweens and up, which then puts it in a really weird place, because you're not Disney-fied, you're not Game of Thrones-ing it. You're kind of you're in this weird, slightly neutered but oddly aroused area of everything's a bit confusing, hair's growing in all the wrong places, and it's just an odd sausage of a tone, but it feels very Gaiman-esque, which oddly enough feels Gilliam-esque as well.
Yeah.
Which is no surprise that he started on this, and then did Brothers Bloom and just went, no, I've done this. I don't need to do this twice.
Brothers Grimm.
Brothers, what did I say? Bloom.
Yeah.
Grimm. I keep
Too many
this.
brothers.
Too many brothers. Yeah.
I think for me, there's also there's like a lack of real peril. There's never, up until like kind of the end
But brothers are dying left, right, and
battle.
centre. There's a brother. He gets thrown out the window within the first 5 minutes.
But that's kind of comedic peril. This is like, there's no peril to like the hero's kind of mission at any real point. I mean, he gets turned into a mouse, but then he's released again. There's no like fake peril. Like, you're just like, well, it's going to happen. It might be a bit slow, but it's probably going to happen. I was expecting some kind of like danger or genuine like, and it was just a bit like, oh, so yeah, they're all right. Yeah, yeah, they're doing that.
Well, yeah, the entire stakes is essentially he's going on this mission to get laid. He just wants to get laid with Sienna Miller. And that kind of, she just creates the ticking clock, which is, in 2 days or whatever it is, I'm going to marry Henry Cavill. So he's kind of got this time limit to bring back Vaughn. But that is essentially why he's doing it. And then, yeah.
It's almost like he's going for entirely the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
It's not really a hero's journey, is it?
And he'll learn the value of what really matters
which is Claire Danes.
It is Claire Danes.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, so you have this kind of like odd couple romance at the start when they start off very bickery at first. And I think Vaughn's an interesting one because she's, for a lot of the film, not much more than like a prop rather than a character with agency. Like she's the object that they're getting, and her kind of journey,
literal object.
Yeah, and her kind of journey is just coming to realize that she loves him. And I wish she had something more central to do, because I love these like MacGuffin chase movies. Like it reminds me more of almost like Midnight Run than Princess Bride, where it's like you got these different subsects of characters going after the same thing or similar things, and she's at the center of all of it. So I think it could be really cool if she became really crucial to stuff a lot more, when really it's kind of a coincidence that she's the star physically that the witches want, and she is also in possession of the stone that the princes want. But she's just literally kind of, tied up and dragged around by Tristan.
Has a few baths. She has a lot
has
of
a few
baths.
nice baths.
Very
Sounds
clean.
quite nice.
What about the flying pirate ship with Robert De Niro? What do you guys make of that side of things? And how does Captain Robert De Niro sit in your craw in this day and age?
Yeah. It just wouldn't wash now, would it? Really? That's, watching that and knowing... Rupert Everett's in this film, isn't he? He's one of the ghosts.
Yeah.
I'd be like, he would have been great as that pirate captain. You get a Rupert Everett in there playing that role, I think that would be... it seemed like the De Niro thing was stunt casting.
Yeah, because that's the only other way the joke can go, isn't it, in a way? If it's like, if you have someone like Rupert Everett playing Butch, and then he goes the other way, and you're like,
They're already laughing at that concept.
Yeah.
I think that's great.
Whereas they went the other way and goes, we're going to have Robert De Niro, who or imagine to be this Butch guy, and then show that he's putting on that front for his men. It's very kind of iffy, but I think it's it's nicely kind of handled in the sense that, he's just doing it because he loves his men, really, and they love him as well, and it kind of all comes out as like, don't worry, we love you no matter like who you are, Captain. And there's that sense of kind of like family amongst them is quite a nice mini subplot in itself, even though De Niro's cranking up the camp, but it does feel that kind of camp thing, because you would say like, oh, this is the film where famed hard man Robert De Niro just kind of
but it's
camps
like
it up.
Kevin Kline in and out levels of camp. When he gets there, you're just like, look, that shit didn't wash in 1997. It doesn't wash in 2007. Are we not learning any lessons here? Good grief.
I think it's getting better and better. But then, one film I haven't seen is Prom, where James Corden wore gay faces, as some people refer to it as, and just took it to the nth degree where you just don't need to do that. So I think it's getting rarer and rarer. And
at least this has the excuse of being like nearly 15 years old now, at least,
which is still no time.
Yeah.
But I think it shouldn't be the punchline. Is the thing. I can understand. I can get that. Obviously, he's in this world and he needs to maybe be in a closet and hide who his personality is. But I don't feel that should be the punchline.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Outside of that, it's a very straight film, isn't it? Even though it is in this world and everything. But no, it's fun because all the pirate ship stuff was all the stuff I worked on when I was there. So I was there for like 2 weeks. It was I was at uni at
De Niro.
Yeah. He's good. He's a good actor, funny enough. Yeah. It was like I was at uni and we had 6 weeks of work experience to do or something, and through no fault of my own, I managed to get on this. Like a friend of mine, I don't even know how. I think he just had someone he knew on the production said, oh, they need a bunch of essentially unpaid runners, basically, because it was so cheap. So me and like 6 other people off my course all went, And so I kind of stayed in this little hostel with 2 others, and we drove in every day, and it was all pinewood on one of the big stages, and they kind of had the ship built, and you could just pop up through the hollow core, get onto the deck. So all the deck was on one stage, and then on another stage was all the interiors, which was cool. And it was fun. We were just kind of in charge of essentially manning the aircon. So this is the glamour of filmmaking.
So if I go on IMDb, are you there as aircon manager?
I'm there as something. It might just be uncredited runner, but it's like, so this old stage, I think it was our stage, which is quite near the top. It's an old thing where when the big doors are shut and they're rolling sound and they have all the lights on, the place gets super hot, and it's such an old like barn of a stage that there's no other way of controlling the air. So as soon as they're rolling and the doors are down, temperature starts to rise. So the second they call cut, they have to open these big doors up, and then there's this massive external air conditioning machine with these massive sort of tubes that we kind of had to wheel in and just blast the stage. So we were doing that, and then they needed 2 of us in the rafters up where the lights are at all times to do the opposite, where we had to close a little fire door and then open it and have the exhaust sort of a big aircon pipe go out the door. So it was just like death up there. We're just like passing out, but it was really cool because we just kind of like we'd climb these ladders and like hop about the top of the stage like the Phantom of the Opera or something, and just kind of just be up there and watch them do everything from a bird's eye view, and then do things like go around with food trays and things like that. But it was great. And then when they had all the stuff in the rain, of course, the rain machine, so we had to set up like a little warm room for people to dry off in and things like that. It's really real movie magic, actually, outside of the mix of the down to the earth, this is what it actually entails, stop and starting and big aircon units. But then, I'm on like, it's a flying pirate ship collecting lightning. That's pretty cool.
Well, dude, it sounds like good fun. Let's head to the scores.
Hello, folks. I'm Sam.
And I'm Martin.
And every week for the last 5 years, we've got together to talk about the musician Tom Waits.
He's a gravelly voice singer that sounded like he doused his vocal cords in bourbon and set fire to them with a cigarette and wrote such classic songs as Way Down in the Hole, Downtown Train, Jersey Girl.
He's also the gravelly voiced actor from films such as The Ballad of Buster Scruggs and Seven Psychopaths, both of which coincidentally are on Netflix and both of which Kobi and Helen have discussed here on Flixwatcher.
So make sure you check those episodes out, and when you have a little bit of a taste for the magic that is Tom Waits, why not head over to songbysongpodcast.com or search for Song by Song in your podcatcher of choice to listen to a little bit more about Tom Waits.
Welcome to our Flixwatcher scores. All of our scores are out of 5. You can have decimal places if you wish, and we'll start with you, please, Matt, with your recommendability.
Recommendability? Yeah, I'll go as high as a 4 for this, because I think, as I've said, I think it's hard to tell where this will land with people. And I think, people who enjoy just a good adventure, a good story, there is a lot in here to like. It is a funny film. It is a romantic film. I think it does a lot of good stuff in there. So I don't want to go as far as saying, as demeaning it as being like, it's baby's first fantasy or whatever. But I think it has a lot of entry levels for a lot of ages, because as you said, it's very much in a mature state itself without being 15 or R-rated, so I think it is in a unique space. So yeah, I'll give it a 4.
Daryl?
Yeah, I think a 4 sounds reasonable for this. It's one I definitely recommend. It's one of those ones that if I had friends with like 11, 12-year-old kids and they were at a loose end and they'd watched all the Marvels and all the Disneys and what have you, I'd be like, check this old film out, guys.
It's not an old film, but it is, though, isn't it?
It totally is. It's the one thing, like, teaching in a college and you're teaching 16-year-olds, that'll earn you. You start to feel old. Oh, Niles Barkley, yeah, my dad used to listen to that. Oh my God, Jesus. Yeah. Oh,
that
Kanye,
sounds like a real
my granddad
conversation
listens to
you've had.
Kanye. Like, oh my word. Yeah, literal conversations I've had with human beings that are like tiny human beings in training, I call them.
I've had a few of those.
It's definitely recommend this. It's not going to be for everybody, which is why it won't get the 5. It's not one I could just hand over to everyone. But yeah, no, it's a solid piece, and for what it is as well. Yeah, it goes high up on the list, and I much prefer it to Princess Bride.
I'm kind of very proud of it for like being as good and as fun as it is when it is essentially, it's this smallish British kind of production trying to pass off as something a lot bigger, and I think it does. I think it achieves that, and it's you don't see many full genre UK films really, especially big IP adaptations like this. I think more it's now in the TV space with things like the His Dark Materials and things. Yeah,
TV miniseries, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
In this current iteration, Helen, recommendability.
Yeah, not as high as you guys. I just think it was a bit boring. I think I just was wanting a bit too much from it, a bit more action, a bit more energy, and I think I was expecting to be a lot funnier as well. But it didn't really land for me. So yeah, I'm going to give it a 3. I think there's a lot more. There's more films I'd recommend definitely ahead of this for kind of youngish children. Before I'd go to this.
Where would you go?
I'd go with your Ghostbusters and pretty much all of your kind of Spielbergs and Indiana Jones and all of that before I'd come near this.
Yeah, I'm going to go for 4.1. I don't know who I wouldn't recommend it to, but I don't know who specifically I would do, because I think that's the hard bit with it, isn't it? And it sounds like in the marketing, that's probably what confused me as well and didn't draw me to it initially. Even though I was a big fan of Ricky Gervais, I think he was like front and center of the marketing campaign that I saw. I was just like, I was going to see this film Ricky Gervais is in. And then it's like,
this must have been like peak kind of extras time.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, I really enjoy this is really good fun. So maybe it's just the element of surprise that's taken me and taken me 15 years since watching for the first time to now, where I'm still surprised. It's like, this is better than I thought it was going to be. So I think that's the recommendation I give to people. If someone says, should I watch Stardust? I'm like, yeah, why not? But I can wholeheartedly concede people like Helen that they might not enjoy it, but I'd still say watch it, because I think there's some pieces to take away from it. Repeat viewing score, Matt.
So yeah, I guess I'll pop it down a bit. I mean, I think Daryl, as you've discovered, repeat viewing works well for this, but I'll go a bit lower at maybe like a 3.7, I guess. I think it's one of those ones where it could very definitely be somebody's favorite film. I can see someone seeing it at the right time, at the right age, would be one that they can revisit a lot. And I think having the multiple kind of plot threads and the big cast, I think there's a lot to discover, and there's probably lots of people's different favorite characters in there. So I think it's one that definitely you can see it being like put on a lot by parents of kids a certain age, maybe, I don't know, or if the kids themselves are a certain age, ones that they always go back to. Like, I don't quite know where the area is, but I can see it being kind of a firm favorite. So, I mean, yeah, I hadn't seen it in quite a while. But it's good to remember that I do enjoy it so much.
Daryl.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit on something there. I think maybe there is a generation of younger people than us, that kind of hold this into like this is their Princess Bride, this is their nostalgia thing. Like, I guarantee, they'll be
the ones going, oh, yeah, I remember this.
There is going to be a slew of young women and men to whom Charlie Cox, when he reveals himself on that ship as that was a whole like, oh, hello. And yeah, like this is, I think this has that to it. There are most probably Funko Pops for this film. This is one of those films. But
collect all the ghosts.
Yeah, I think this is one that in another however many years' time, 6 years' time, we'll be getting all of those think piece articles about 20 years of Stardust, because I think it certainly hit a certain about people a certain way. For me, I think I was slightly too old, definitely too old to have had that kind of relationship with it. But I just remember just digging the Take That song as well.
Yeah, well, there's one Take That song I loved, Never Forget. That always ended in my student union nights, and me and the guys and girls who hadn't pulled would get in a circle at the end of the night and dance together to that. And then, and that, I 100% love that song. But outside of that, I didn't really like Take That. But I was so surprised. I was like, I like that. I like this song. I like this Take That song.
Well, this is their big reunion, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah.
And I think I liked some more from this album as well. I can't remember the rest of the songs, but I was like, I like these other songs from Take That. What is happening? So what's your score? What's your repeat viewing score for this?
I'm going to give it a 3. Yeah,
Helen.
I would definitely be watching
Sorry.
it again with before. It was not going to take me 14 or 15 more years in which to watch this again. I'll watch it again soon, no doubt.
Helen.
Does it take that song in it?
End
At the
credits,
end.
yeah.
Does that take that?
Yeah, Rule the World. I think it's Rule the World. I don't know names. I just know I like the song.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very quickly becoming even further away from kind of like my target market. I'm not going to watch this again, but I'm glad that you forced me to watch it again. In the nicest way. 1.5.
Yeah, I'm going to watch this again. I'll watch it. I'm sure I'll watch it every 2 or 3 years, which seems to be the kind of rotation at the moment. I think like a good fun romp. Small screen score, Matt.
Yeah, I'll go almost sort of down the middle, like a 3.4.
How well do you think that the special effects hold up from when you first saw it to now?
I was just going to say that because, Daryl talking off mic about, how small screen score these days can mean anything from like watching on your phone or your laptop to a really good sort of 4K TV. So it depends where it holds up. But I think this is something that does not so much show its age with its special effects, just shows what it was working with to begin with. Like there's that little bit early on where there's little small elephants in a cage and they're kind of bizarre and they almost look like animatic CIG. That's CIG? CGI. Yeah. And the eyeballs straight after, and like, the ghost effects. It's all but it all kind of adds to its charm. So there's a few moments of kind of big green screen-ness, like with the pirate ship and everything. But then there are parts like, I really love the kind of final showdown in the Witch's Lair. And it's a case of kind of like the idea and the conception and the execution almost going above and beyond the visual effects capability. So the whole voodoo doll effect on Mark Strong as he fighting and as he drowns and then using his corpse as like a sort of puppet fighter is a really cool idea, and that's done really well. That's really kind of seamless.
Just him shrugging, like all the other guys looking at him. He's like, "What's not me?" It's great.
Daryl. Sorry, what did you say? 3.4?
3.4, yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, small screen score. Cards on the table. I watched the first 30 minutes of this on my phone heading into work on Tuesday because I was like, I don't have time. So I watched the first half hour there. I didn't do the same on the way back, and then caught the rest on the telly, and I went from like a iPhone 8s to 50-inch TV, and you know what? Totally fine. I didn't catch this at the cinema. My first viewing was on standard definition DVD. So for me, I'm going to give this a 4. Yeah, quite high.
Helen?
I'm going to give it a 5. I think this kind of is perfect for like watch on a Sunday afternoon kind of TV on your TV vibes. Maybe you'd want to go to a watch along if there was a group of you. I'm not really sure. Is it kind of that
doesn't
sort of
feel
thing?
like it's going to make it into the Prince Charles lineup or anything. We haven't. Those fans aren't ready yet.
Unless there's a Matthew Vaughn season.
Hit and miss that one. I think it's like perfect TV afternoon vibes. So 5 small screen.
It's Easter weekend viewing. Yeah,
I'm going to go for 5 as well. I think this is, as Helen says, it's kind of lounging around, sofa vibes having on. I did see it at the cinema. I can't remember the visuals being what engaged me. I think everything else was what brought me into it. And I don't think I need to be in the room with other people to enjoy it. So I don't need that vibe, that collective viewing vibe to get the most out of it either. Engagement score.
My first,
Go on.
I was just going to say, my first viewing of this in the cinema, I remember quite vividly because I just took like a whole bunch of friends along as if it was my own premiere. I was like, well, you see, I helped create this thing, and so we had like a whole row of people, which was quite fun.
It should really say Matthew Vaughn and Jane Goldman and Matthew Bruns.
Exactly. I mean, that's it.
I said no, I don't want that. I don't want that kind of attention.
I'll go uncredited. It's fine.
Engagement score, Matt.
Engagement score. Yeah, I'll go pretty high again. I'll go like a 4.2, I think. Like, I think it really zips along. And as said, with the multiple plot threads, it really kind of draws you in. It's just the stakes being quite low, I think, in general, and the lack of peril for sure. And the witches, Michelle Pfeiffer, she's having a ball here. She's having so much fun. But, their evil plan is essentially they just want to be young again. And it just happens that it's going to require the death of, this character that Tristan's falling for. But yeah, still plenty going on, and I think the way it all kind of culminates towards the end with Tristan being there and the princess being there and the witches all fighting off, I think it's a good kind of climax. And then, of course, reveal of Tristan being like a half brother as well and becoming heir to the kingdom is a great kind of proper fairy tale ending there.
Sorry, I missed your score. 4.2.
4.2.
Daryl.
I'm gonna go for a 3. Yeah, it's fun. I enjoyed it. Again, I'll definitely see it again at some point. But even watching it when I had to shut this down as I hit Old Street and I had to make a run to work, I wasn't like, oh no, I need to know what's happening next. I didn't spend the entire day rocking back and forth, gripping the chair, just like, I need to know what happens to Charlie Cox. No, it just didn't happen that way. I was totally engaged with it, but yeah, it was good. I enjoyed it, but if I'd stopped it halfway through and never went back because life happened, then also so be it.
And leading on to that, I don't rarely do this, but I watched it in 2 bits because the first hour, nothing really happens. And I was like, oh, got another hour of this. I'm going to have to come back to it.
It is long.
A brother falls out the window, gets thrown out the window.
Yeah, really, really at the start. And then as soon as they get into the witch's lair, like all of the best things happen in that bit. Like there's the being used as a voodoo puppet, there's genuine peril, there's the wolves eating a witch to death, which is like,
the fire and the lightning out of a little container.
Yeah. So like, everything up until that point, I was a bit like, oh, they're still riding horses. They're still flying on that ship. And then all this happens. I'm like, yeah. And there's the really funny bits as well. And like the bit where he's suffocating in the water is like great. Just like, why couldn't it have been a bit more like that? Spread out a bit along there. Probably about 2.5 engagement.
I'm going to go for 3. I think it's a lazy afternoon at home watching it, and not in the background, but you just don't need to kind of pay attention, and you'll pick things up if you fall asleep. You pick it up the next day from when you wake up. So I think it's that kind of vibe. That gives us an overall score of 3.58750. Pretty good. I thought it was going to be higher.
Great. Yeah, my overall score for the film would have been like 3.5. 3.5 stars. So yeah,
Matt was 3.82500.
Oh, well, okay. Mathematically, there we are.
I'm the highest scorer here with over 4. Do we head to Twitter?
Yes.
Cool. Okay, everyone who's listening, do find us on Twitter. We are at Flixwatcher Pod. We do put out some film banter during the week, but also ahead of recording, we put out tweets like this. We're reviewing Stardust with SDD Film Podcast and Matt Brothers 2 from Is Paul Dano Ok? Have you seen it? Tells your thoughts and a score out of 5 stars for a shout out on Flixwatcher. And we had a couple of short tweets here. Matt, do you want to take the first one?
Yes, this is from Hallmark of Greatness. And they say, one of my wife's favourite films, only let down by some questionable choices by De Niro and the inclusion of Ricky Gervais, but a fun family romp. 4 golden Fabios out of 5.
I don't get the Fabio quote there.
No.
Fair enough. Maybe that's just a Hallmark thing. Hallmark of Greatness. Thank you very much. Daryl.
Next up on here, we have Tess, or Trent on Tess. I really enjoyed it. Probably a 4. I didn't expect to like it, but I did.
Thank you very much. I mean, it's honest.
Yeah, I like that.
Guys, can you tell us where we can find you online? Tell us where we can find Is Paul Dano OK? And, well, say goodbye to the listeners.
We're everywhere across Twitter and Instagram on Is Paul Dano OK? By now, our first season is complete. So we've got 8 main episodes covering films like Okja, Cowboys and Aliens, Little Miss Sunshine, and some of his smaller unknown stuff that we really dug. Stuff like Being Flynn and LIE, which was his early Sundance kind of very gritty drama.
With some great guests there as well. Yeah,
some fantastic guests. We've got Ayanna Murray, we've got Nick DeSemlin, Eleanor Parker from Bygones, Petros from Caged In, like lots of great people. LSD, we got Liam from Spocklight, my buddy. Lots of great guys. So that's all season 1 all done now. And then season 2 will start on the 5th of July with Swiss Army Man with Daisy Edwards from W Rated podcast. So we'll have a lot more great films than that. So we'll do the similar thing, cover about 8 main films, and then our bonuses for season 2 are going to be War and Peace, the entire BBC series.
It still sounds mad every time you say it, but yeah.
And distill that into one episode. Well, fair enough. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for coming on. Bye.
Bye.
Enjoyed this episode of Flixwatcher podcast? Why not leave us a 5-star review on iTunes? You can also follow us at FlixWatcherPod on Twitter, and we're at FlixWatcher on Instagram. Thanks as always to the mighty people for their mighty tunes, and Ben from Rockwood Audio for his awesome editing skills. If you're looking to get your podcast edited as sweet as this, get in touch with Ben, and that's Rockwood, ROKK Wood Audio. Tell them Flixwatcher sent you.
You just heard a Stripped Media production.